Welcome to the Retirement Evolved podcast with certified financial fiduciary Adam Bruno.
Yeah, and actually this is the inaugural podcast.
Wow, I still can't believe it, and it sounds so good, Bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I heard my name. It makes me so excited. I'm moving in the seat a little bit with the music.
Yeah, you're somebody now, buddy.
Can you tell my wife, please?
Yeah, we'll get to her next. Absolutely, absolutely. How are you, sir?
I am doing really well. It's been a crazy year so far, but the nice thing about our industry is I get to help a lot more people when things are crazy, right?
Yeah, and that's really why we're here. If you're just catching us for the first time, first of all, thank you very much for listening. And it has been a crazy year. What we're here to discuss today is how to get ready for retirement. That's really why we're here, to talk with Adam Bruno of Evolution Retirement Services. And as you were saying, Adam, boy, this year certainly has got everybody's attention.
Oh, Bill, I just have one quick thing that I want to add. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you find a lot of value here. Bill's here, and he's been doing this for so many years. What are you, about 104 now, Bill?
Yeah.
But what I would say is, it's interesting as we go through our accumulation phase, and we're trying to save enough for retirement. A lot of the successful families that will listen to this podcast, this is a familiar story to them, right, Bill? They save, they go without, they sacrifice things, all in the name of having enough for retirement, right?
Right.
But we get so trained in the way that we do things in this accumulation phase that when we finally get to retirement, oh boy, now it's the same story. Now I need to have enough for retirement. I need to have enough to last the next 20 years. So we haven't really gotten away from this strategy of I have to have enough, I have to accumulate more. And that's where I see a lot of the mistakes happening is the inability to move away from this accumulation mode and understand that retirement becomes so much more than just performance on the investments.
Right. And, the first thing I know that a lot of people freak out about is that accumulation stops when you retire, right? I mean, the one that you're used to, the paycheck every 2 weeks or, bi-monthly or whatever.
Oh, sure. And I think, when you say the accumulation stops, I think what really, really makes people concerned is, if they're set up a certain way to accumulate that wealth, and then we have something that's happened now, like since the beginning of the year, right? And they see things disappearing, what they don't realize is that would have been okay 20 or 25 years ago because we still had all this time to make up for that loss. But, it's not their fault, Bill. Successful families are successful for a reason. And over the last 15 years, oh boy, I mean, we could have thrown a dart at an investment with our blindfold on, and it probably would have performed. I mean, 15 years of a bull market, you can't blame people for getting a little greedy when it's been so consistent, right? But what we have been preaching to our families for the last 5 years is, things like interest rates that have been artificially held down. We knew there was a storm on the horizon, right? Everybody had time to prepare for it. But some people, especially I'm in Florida, and if you tell a Floridian there's a hurricane coming, they're at the bar and they're still, watching TV that night and having their beer, and it could be like 2 hours before the storm before they take shelter. They're just not scared of hurricanes, right? And if you're doing so well in the stock market, that kind of success really leads us to feel like we're a little bit invincible, right?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a question just as a Joe guy out here on the street. You just used an interesting phrase to my ears was inflation rates were held down artificially. What does that mean, and why would you do that? Why does that happen?
So interest rates, and again, if you're listening to this podcast, a lot of these are my opinion with facts baked into this, okay? Obviously, Bill, do you remember what happened in 2008?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I think anybody listening can remember what happened in 2008. And you know what the first thing they're going to say? Well, my accounts went down. And that's not even what I'm discussing. What I'm discussing is the housing market crash that happened in 2008. So what we discovered was we needed to artificially hold down these interest rates so that it would inspire people to go out and buy houses, even in this horrible situation that we're in now. People are upside down, but we still needed people for the economy to continue to go out and buy homes, right? So we have this idea of artificially holding down these interest rates, but we didn't just stop after 2008. We held them down for as long as we could. And think about this for a minute. I mean, even last year or even 2 years ago, you could get a mortgage on a 30-year mortgage. You could be paying 3.25%, right? I mean, it just wasn't realistic. We didn't allow interest rates to gradually start climbing again like they should have. They should have been gradually climbing and increasing. Instead, we held them down and said, oh, it's working okay. It's working okay. But I say the same thing. If you put the top on a boiling pot of water, right?
Right.
And if you let it boil for long enough, that water's just going to keep going until it explodes, whether the top's on it or not. And that's what we did with interest rates. And that's why we've seen interest rates climb so high this year, so many increases. Heck, we just got done with a 75 basis point increase, almost 1% increase. And we've got 3 or 4 more scheduled for this year. It was just too much. We couldn't keep holding them down, and we did anyway. And that's really affected things.
And what's crazy is I've got friends that are trying to buy a house right now, and they're like, oh, my God, I had to pay 6% interest for my loan. And I'm thinking to myself, it sounds horrible in context, right, to what we've done for the last, 12 years or so.
Right.
But really, 6% is still not too bad when you're borrowing money in the long run. It seems like a lot because of what we're used to. I mean, I had friends at 5% getting upset. I said, look, dude, if I told you I would lend you $100 and you owe me $105, would you take the deal? And they're like, sure. For some reason, I guess because interest rates, heck, at one point were in the upper 2s, it was like giving money away, right?
They were.
I guess because it's so low, people are just looking at this as tremendously huge hikes because, not to bore people, but I bought my first house in 1987, and I rushed to the bank because interest rates had just dropped to a flat 10%. And I was pumped.
I was going to say that. I think my dad, our first house cost like, $32,000 or $38,000 or something on 79th Street in good old fashioned Niagara Falls there, right? All my Niagara Falls people listening. 79th Street and Buffalo Avenue side, not 79th Street and Niagara Falls Boulevard side, because Niagara Falls Boulevard side was the more expensive side.
Well, of course, yeah.
But I think the interest rate then, and this was like in 1983 or something, I think his interest rate was like 12% or something like that. So it's not, and ironically enough, it's not something that will break the bank. It's just we've been so trained to expect lower interest rates when it wasn't realistic to maintain them for that long. And what you're seeing now is the direct result of that.
Well, yeah, and not only is that happening, but then, of course, I guess it's a combination of everything, right? Because interest rates are going up. And then on top of that, we're just seeing the price of everything go up. And so I think people are starting to get freaked out a little bit, right? I mean, gas is up. Chicken is up if you can find it at the grocery store.
Right.
The supply chain issues, all of this kind of hitting us all at one time is probably what's making people feel so nervous.
It's interesting. And we use the word recession, right?
Right.
When is the next recession? That's the big topic lately. When you think about that word, recession, isn't that kind of what we're already doing? Hasn't everybody now, with everything that's happening, taken a big step back?
Yep.
I mean, that's really what recession is. It goes beyond the numbers. It's our mindset. And I'm sorry. I just think that, you can't be on social media and not blame leadership for this, right? I mean, there's just so much that's happening. I don't want to turn this into a political conversation unless it gets my ratings up. But, but when we talk about this,
works for other people.
Right. I know. Right. Let's just say that it doesn't matter who's in office. There's always things that happen. There's give and take. And right now it's like we're in the middle of the ocean and we're trying to find the lighthouse. I mean, it's just, when is it going to end? It just keeps piling. It's like quicksand, right? We just dipped one toe in and now all of a sudden we're up to our chest and there's no end in sight. Not just the supply issues, gas issues. Let's talk about gas prices for a minute. Okay. As much as we don't want to blame leadership for this, certain sides of the fence don't want to blame leadership. The reality is, if we look at gas prices today compared to what they were, a year ago or 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It's a big difference. And part of that difference is because we were utilizing our own resources. We were doing things a little bit differently. With such an impact right now on those prices, why doesn't leadership open up our resources? Why aren't we allowed to use our own resources? So if we're not going to use it now, the scary part is, when is a good time to use them then, right? I mean, are they waiting for the zombie apocalypse? I mean, what's it going to take, right?
Well, if one were a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not, but if one were, one would say, well, it looks like they're really trying to do everything they can to sell electric cars by making gas too expensive. To be honest with you, I've actually read that somewhere. I don't spread conspiracy theories, but it is interesting, right?
How does that make you feel, Bill?
Well, it's funny because when I was growing up, I really didn't believe in that kind of thing. And then some things have happened in the last 10 years that have made me go, kind of rub my chin and go, I don't know. But it is interesting that at a time when the electric car is becoming more easy to buy and more prevalent, that suddenly we can't afford gas. So I'm just saying.
I would agree with you to a certain extent, right? I certainly, I've always wondered what's inside Area 51. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I'll listen to anything. There is some merit to the fact that it's actually funny that we saw this big push towards EVs, electric vehicles. And now all of a sudden, you don't really see that push anymore. I would be more concerned over the power of big oil. And if anything happens to me, just make sure my death is investigated. But I'd be a little bit more concerned about the power that they wield and how they've suddenly managed to, dip their hand back into the pie here and control everything. And obviously it's no secret that big oil supports politics and politicians, and they're, well, not necessarily directly the politicians, but maybe their spouses and whatever. It's just that it feels like big oil did not have as much of a stronghold on us, a year or 2 years ago. And now all of a sudden it's feeling like they've got us in a stranglehold, right? It's unbelievable. Yeah. The prices. And again, to me, if we're talking conspiracy theory, that's a direct result of leadership and not exercising control over, big oil. I mean, big oil doesn't want electric vehicles, right? We got to keep selling oil.
Right. Right.
Just look at the prices on barrels of oil. Look at the fluctuation from now to, a year or 2 years ago. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. And, the thing is that it probably becomes more prevalent to folks that are now into retirement or getting close to retirement, right? Because as we started the show talking about, when that paycheck stops for us, and if we're not totally ready for retirement, if we haven't put a plan together, it can be very scary times, right? I mean, just buying enough gas to get to the grocery store to find out there's no chicken to buy can be right. Very expensive, and then it all just kind of snowballs. And, with inflation at a 40-year high and gas being so expensive, what kinds of things do you do with your folks, with your families, to help get them ready for not necessarily what we're going through now, because we didn't really see a lot. Well, maybe you did see a lot of it coming, but the pandemic spurred quite a bit of this and nobody saw that coming. But what do you do with families when you sit down and you talk with them about how to get ready for retirement? What are you guys aiming for?
What's interesting is we have kind of maintained our course and what we do and our strategies for the last 5 years. I would tell you that one of the biggest items that we talk about with our families is taxes. And I hate to be a Debbie Downer right now, but we haven't even seen all the trouble on the horizon, because in 2026, we know that, the Security and Jobs Act, that's gone. And we've got, now what's going to happen with taxes, because something's going to happen. We know estate planning is going to change because now it's a $6 million estate exclusion instead of a $10 million. So, what we do is we've noticed that there's a couple key areas that keep rearing their head with, most of the successful families that we work with. One of them is indeed taxes, and the idea that taxes are probably the lowest they've been in close to 40 years. So I always like to use the term taxes are on sale right now. Taxes are at a discount right now. And what I mean by that is any chance that we have to pay the taxes now rather than later, we're going to save so much money in the long run. And we have reports that we generate that show families this. So that's one area that we focus on. The other area that we focus on is this idea of Roth conversion. And the idea that, your IRA funds, if they were converted to Roth, you no longer have things like required minimum distributions that you have to take. And again, you're paying your taxes at one of the lowest points in history right now. So it's not 1913 when taxes were 1%, but
right.
To give you an example, in 1940s, 1970s, people are used to paying anywhere from 35 to 40%. Average households are used to paying that much. Right now, it's the first 10,500 isn't even taxed. And then, most people are in the 12% bracket. So there's a lot of room there compared to what people are used to. So it's just going to get really, really bad from a tax perspective. And the other thing that we focus on is, Medicare surcharges. Those are three key areas. So you've got your taxes, your Roth conversion, your Medicare surcharges. And we tie all that together with estate planning as well. We have two estate planning attorneys. We have two CPAs. We have a team that we've put together, certified financial planners. We've got two of those. We have this idea that everything has to work together, because when everything isn't working together, there is so much opportunity that's lost. And I have to tell you, Bill, it's due to the little things. I always have a saying, the little things lead to the big things. My kids are tired of hearing me say it too. But that's the reality. If we can't do the little things right, if we miss out on those little things, we miss out on the bigger opportunity that we would have had if we would have just focused the right way on those. So I think really hammering down on those issues. And it's funny because, financial advisors, and that's the problem. Nobody can see me using my air quotes here, but financial advisors are normally focused on accumulation, and they'll tell you, oh yeah, we can make a plan for this. Well, we're actually in the weeds doing that every day of every week, because we only deal with families that are in retirement or nearing retirement. So something that a normal financial advisor might only see once or twice a year, we're seeing it every day. So those are really, I would say that you have to focus on those three topics, but you also have to put the work in, right? I mean, you can't just talk about it. You have to have a strategy and a process to put that into place.
And that's where you and your team at Evolution Retirement Services come in. Right? Folks come in, they sit down, and they talk with you. And, I've got to be honest with you, I used to kind of just get up every day and do my thing. But the older I've gotten, the more I have come to realize how nice it is to actually have a plan. Because it does make it easier to put my head on the pillow at night, and it does make it easier to deal with some of the things that we're going through, like right now, the things that we can't control that are affecting our money. So I know that, putting that plan together is so important.
Right. And, the plan isn't about not losing money and getting this great performance. Because I'll tell you what, I've had people that have sat across from me, with millions and millions of dollars, and we're so happy with their 30% return in their IRA. You know what I noticed though, Bill, is that not one person had an effective tax plan so that they could actually keep that 30% gain. So that's the difference. It's the shift in mentality of this is not about performance anymore. And that's what we do. Our families, we haven't lost any families. We didn't lose any families after all of this, the stock market volatility, because we put real parameters in place with what we're willing to lose and what we're willing to risk. And we're very diversified with the way that we do things. And everything though, all the investments, I always say it the same way. Investments are a quarter of what we do, because everything else goes back to the estate plan, the advanced tax planning, making sure that the wealth is transferred correctly upon death. There is so much money lost in that situation. I'll give you a perfect example. I sat down with somebody the other day, a family that I met at one of my workshops. And they came in and they had about $3.8 million. And it was all, it wasn't all. 3.2 million of it was in IRAs. And they were in their 60s. This is money that they did not need. Even if they did need it, that's still a lot of money in an IRA that hasn't been really diversified. All mutual funds, things like that. And we know mutual funds are really expensive. So I looked at it and I did a report for them. I didn't talk about their mutual funds or their investments. That didn't matter at that time. What mattered at that time is, what is their number? What could they end up potentially paying to the IRS if they live until they're 90? So the team and I put together a report that showed them living until the age of 90. And it showed an average 5% return on their investments. And what we were able to do was show them that if they were to convert money strategically over time, they would actually save over $2.3 million.
Wow.
That would have went to the IRS. And part of that is not just on the taxes for their required minimum distributions. For those of you that are new to this industry, a required minimum distribution is the amount of money that you are forced to take out of your IRA when you turn, right now it's 72. They're thinking about raising that to 75. But you take that out, and of course you have to pay the taxes on it. If you don't take it out, you have to pay a 50% tax penalty. So, could you imagine that, Bill? $3.2 million and $2.3 million of it over time is going to go to the IRS?
Yeah. No, thank you. I've always said that, Uncle Sam looks nice, but he's not really a relative. He's not the guy you want to be leaving your money for. So
right. I always say we love Uncle Sam. We hate the IRS, the immortal revenue service. You know, if they're listening right now, I'm allowed to say that. This is free speech.
Well, you know what's great about this? If you're loving what you're hearing with Adam, again, check out their website at evolutionretirementservices.com. Not only that, but Adam's written a really cool book. It's called They Lied, The Real Cost of Retirement. And it answers the big question, why didn't I know this about my retirement? And Adam, I got to tell you, the book is awesome. It does answer a bunch of questions that a lot of us have. What spurred you to do that?
I'm going to be really honest with you. When I was growing up, I was a little bit sick until I turned about 12 or 13. And then I got into sports and I was able to do things that I really liked that way. But spent a lot of my time reading. And I loved science fiction, books. I was a big Dungeons and Dragons geek. And I would read these books and I said, one day I'm going to write a book. And of course I was in middle school and I had told one of my good friends this, Jackie Venturelli. I don't know if she's listening now, but I said, I'm going to write a book one day. So in my yearbook that year in 8th grade, ironically enough, I was voted most likely to succeed. And Jackie and I were kind of up against each other for that, I think. And I think she might have taken that the wrong way, that I won and she didn't. But she left a nice little note in my yearbook. Hey, Bruno, give me a call when you finish your novel. And you could just hear the sarcasm dripping off of her voice, right?
Right,
so,
right.
That's always been a little bit of a motivation for me. I always knew I wanted to write a book. I just never thought it was going to be in the financial industry. And I got to a point after a couple of years of doing this where I said, man, I've got to write this down. People just don't realize. So I did what I could, made some notes. Unfortunately, I was a single dad for a long time. I was raising my 2 kids full time, my 2 older ones, until I met my wife now. I love her to death. We have 2 little ones, 2 under 2. As soon as Maverick, my youngest son, was born about 18 months ago, I said, I've got to get this done. I can do this now. I can take a little time. So I'm rocking the baby and I'm typing things out. And it was very important to me to write it myself. I used a company called 90 Minute Books, really happy with them. And I wanted it to be, 75 pages or less. I wanted to drop some really important information. And more importantly, I wanted people to ask questions, because the minute we start asking questions, that's when real change happens. I could go shout from the mountaintops, hey, you really need to read this book, or you need to understand this. But if you can get people talking about it, that's what's important. And people don't talk enough about taxes, about what that potentially looks like, about their IRAs, about Medicare. Nobody really knows what a Medicare surcharge is. I mean, it's crazy to me, especially when you're retired, because this is who it affects the most.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you what, if you'd like to get a free copy of the book, all you have to do is go to taxfreefortmyers.com. That's taxfreefortmyers.com. And the book is there waiting for you. Adam wants you to have a copy of this. I mean, it's absolutely free. And boy, with everything else that's going on in the world today, you want to take advantage of that every chance you get.
Right. The funny thing, Bill, is it's funny. Amazon told me to list it on Amazon. I had to charge for it. I said, well, fine. You could charge, $10 for whatever it was. Their minimum was $9.99 for the physical copy. I said, but I want you to charge, 1 penny for the digital download. Because I had this whole idea in my mind, you spend 1 cent to get Adam's 2 cents. Most people would take that deal, right?
Yeah.
But of course, Amazon, being Amazon, said, oh no, it has to be at least 99 cents. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, what a racket. I should have started like an online shipping company like Amazon or something, right? Holy cow. So I really did want everybody to have it for free. So what I was able to do, and again, I think you said the site, Tax-Free Fort Myers, FORTMYERS. If you go to that site, you can just put your email address in and it'll download automatically for you. So you don't have to spend anything on it. And that's kind of how I try to promote it now. And everybody says, well, what are you, crazy? I didn't get into this business to be an award-winning author. That's not what I'm doing. I'm in the trenches. You could talk to so many advisors on the radio or podcasts, and they talk about their team. I'm actually meeting with families. Those guys might have like other people working for them, and you'll be talking to so-and-so today. I sit down with all my families that we meet with, and it's very important to me. That's what I do. I'm not an award-winning author. That's not what I wanted to be. So,
well, don't tell Jackie that.
Well, she's probably not listening anyway. But yeah, Jackie, boy, I'll tell you what, man, that was fire in the belly when she said that to me. I'm like, oh, really? Okay.
Oh man.
So yeah, that was crazy.
Well, outstanding stuff, Adam. This has been a blast. I can't wait to get together with you again. Again, we're going to fire up another podcast for you here very shortly. And to find out more about Adam Bruno and what he can do for you in retirement, go to evolutionretirementservices.com. You can find out more there, or give him a call at 866-838-3765. 866-838-3765, and set up an appointment to meet with Adam or just talk for a while and figure out what it is he can do for you. And
right. I want to make sure I clarify that, Bill. When people sit down with me, the first meeting, they're always surprised because as a fiduciary, if I'm doing my job right, I can't tell them anything about investments until I know more about them. So people are always surprised how the first meeting is, 45 minutes to an hour. We're spending most of it talking about each other, talking about your situation, your retirement, your lifestyle, what it looks like. I have to know where you are before I can look at where you're going or where you could end up, right? And it's very important to me for people to realize that when you contact me, it's initially just a conversation. It's not, I don't know that we'll be a good fit. And I always say it the same way. We don't work with everybody that we talk to that comes in the door. We don't work with everybody, but we help everybody who comes through the door. So even if these families don't become clients, what is the worst thing that's going to happen if I help everybody? They're going to have something really nice to say, right? It's very rare that I get somebody that says, "Oh, Adam gave me this free report. What a jerk he was," right? It's just not, I give everybody their report and their starting point because we have a process with our families and we run the same reports for them. We do the same process with our families that we do represent. So I don't want anybody to think this is a sales pitch, Bill. You know what I mean? I mean, we've heard too many of those, and I'm sure you've probably had to talk about a few of those in your career, right? I mean,
this is not one of them, folks. I can tell you that right now. So again, if you want to call Adam and the team at 866-838-3765, I'm laughing because now it makes it sound like one. You can do so knowing that first meeting is just going to be a, hey, how are you? Where are you? Where can we go from here kind of meeting? I know a lot of folks right away, too, are just not comfortable sometimes just coming right out talking about their financial situations. So, but at the same time, we all need help with it to make sure we're ready for retirement. So that's what the first meeting is about.
Before even the first meeting, I find that the people really who are interested in this topic and who want to know more, but who might be scared that they're going to be sold something, which, again, is not going to happen. But the reality is, that's why I put the book out there. It's very simple. I have a very long introduction in there where I thank everybody who's made a difference in my life, and I just try to be as candid as I can when I'm writing that book. And I think people get a really good sense of who I am as a person. Obviously, I have faults just like everybody else. I eat a little too much sometimes. I like to sleep in on the weekends. I probably could be spending a little bit more time doing things that are more productive. I'm an avid reader. I probably could have been out on the golf course for that or something, but I'm a horrible golfer. So avid trumps horrible every time.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And you know what? If a little bit of overeating and sleeping in on the weekends makes me wrong, I don't want to be right, as they say, right? Adam, it's been a pleasure, man. We'll talk again soon.
Oh, Bill, I can't wait, brother. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
This is the Retirement Evolve podcast with certified financial fiduciary Adam Bruno of Evolution Retirement Services.
Investment advisory services are offered through Evolution Wealth Management Incorporated, an investment advisor registered with the state of Florida. Registration does not imply any level of skill or training. Evolution Wealth Management's unique CRD number is 307644. You can obtain a copy of Evolution Wealth Management's firm brochure, Form ADV Part 2A, free of charge by visiting advisorinfo.sec.gov. Evolution Wealth Management offers investment advisory services only, where it is appropriately registered or exempt from registration, and only after clients have entered into an investment advisory agreement confirming the terms of engagement and have been provided a copy of the firm's ADV Part 2A. Insurance services are provided by Evolution Retirement Services. Any guarantees mentioned are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company and may be subject to restrictions, limitations, or early withdrawal fees, which vary by the issuer, that do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. You should consider the charges, risks, expense, and investment objectives carefully before entering a contract. This material has been prepared for informational purposes only and should not be construed as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect either transactions in securities or the rendering of personalized investment advice. This material is not intended to provide and should not be relied on for tax, legal, accounting, or other financial advice. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. You should consult your own tax, legal, and accounting advisors before engaging in any transaction. Evolution Wealth Management and Evolution Retirement Services are affiliated entities.